0 to 60 can define a performance car, but it's the fastest 60 to 0 that's the aim of Tarok's brakes. From road cars to race cars, circuits, special stages, or the autostrada, nothing reduces speed like Tarok's brakes. Italy gave the world the art of Da Vinci and Michelangelo. Tarok's has given drivers the art of stopping. For more information and to acquire your own masterpiece, visit tarox.co.uk. Yes, it's me, Mike Stone, and this is the Backseat Driver Podcast. It's the fastest, it's the friendliest, and it's for all the family. The Gas Shocks 116 Trophy and 120 Coupe Cup are the fastest growing race series in the UK, taking in 6 one-hour races and 8 sprints at all the top circuits. Visit 116trophy.com to find out more and get yourself behind the wheel. From a pot of tea to TT motorbikes. From a classic English breakfast to a full serving of classic cars. Bridge House Tea Rooms is the Northwest premier classic car meeting location for cars, bikes, tractors and owners clubs. So no matter what your automotive appetite might be, visit Bridge House Farm Tea Rooms on their Facebook page or call John and Alicia on 07980 444 221 for show details and to reserve your own table and parking space.
I'd like to welcome back to the Backseat Driver Mike Wood, legendary co-driver and a man who has spent his life, it would seem, in the co-driver's seat of rally car. The end of part one we just finished, or we just learnt about how you change the drive shaft on a Mini by rolling it on its side. And I think that was something that happened quite frequently after that, wasn't it? I mean, people used to roll cars on the sides to repair them on rallies, but you could have been the man that decided that this was a feasible thing.
Yes, they started to do that. If I recall one event that we did, the Geneva Rally,
yep,
when BMC entered 2 cars on that. I did it with Tony Fall, and Julian Van Abe, the Belgian driver, was entered with Henry Liddon, and we had 2 cars in that. I think I'm down as winning that event, but I don't think I did. I think that's included in one of my victories, and I don't think we did win it. I think Vic Elford won it.
Yeah.
But just before the finish, again, we needed to do some routine checking and make sure the drive shaft were right.
Yeah.
And I have a lovely photograph which I took myself of the 2 Minis, both on the sides, being fettled.
I mean, it's like I said, this would have caught on really, wouldn't it? People would have realised that you could actually do this.
Well, because the Mini was so small.
Yeah.
And if you've got you only needed about half a dozen people or so, or more than it was easy to push on each side. And what we used to do, when we did it, first of all, at the end of that Spa-Sofia Liège, the spare wheels that we always carried 2 spare wheels.
Yeah.
We put them on the side so that the Mini could rest on those instead of damaging it. Not that it mattered a great deal.
I mean, I think back then damaging a car, though you didn't want to damage it till it was out of the event, damaging cars was relatively commonplace, and there were certain rallies where the car had to be in good condition when it finished because there were points to be scored by that, wasn't there? The fact you hadn't completely parked it to the wall.
Yeah, it mostly happened on British events. International events, you could get the winner in have a decent bit of damage on his car. They weren't penalised for that at all.
Right.
No, it didn't really happen. You certainly could have had a damaged winner.
Yeah.
So but British events, they did penalise you for damage. Yeah.
I mean, 13 RACs and 9 Monte Carlos. I mean, back then, what was the RAC like to drive?
Well, when I first did the RAC rally, way back in my first RAC rally was back in 1956. It was then dubbed the Rally of the Test.
Yes.
There were no special stages in those. They certainly didn't go in forests.
Yeah.
And you had driving tests. the old hill climb. We did Prescott and Shelby Wall. You did some speed tests on disused airfields.
Yeah.
But then it was mostly navigation at night.
Right.
It was like doing a free navigation event that you would do as club events.
Yeah.
During the RAC rally. So a good navigator was very much in demand.
Yeah.
In the 50s. But then when it came in the 60s, a lot of events, not just the RAC, but this before the RAC, had started to take on special stages like the Monte Carlo Rally and stuff like that. And so this was in the early 60s. So what happened was the RAC decided had to go down this path. Now, on the continent, and particularly in France at that time, you could actually close roads to have special stages.
Yep.
You couldn't do that in the UK. You still can't really do it now, or it's just started.
It's just started to come back a little bit.
So what they did, and the head of the RAC competition was Jack Kemsley, he went into the forest.
Yeah.
Which was fantastic. But the RAC rallies in those days were big events, and we were using forests in Wales, in the Lake District, in North Yorkshire, in Scotland, all in one event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, when you were doing it, like you were saying, in February could guarantee snow. The RAC has traditionally a November event, or around about November, hasn't it?
Oh, yes, yeah.
I mean, if there was snow then, or if not snow, muddy conditions.
Well, I'm trying to remember what year it was. It might have been 1968. I think it was 68 on the RAC rally then. No, it wasn't. It was 67 was foot and mouth. It'd be 66 on the RAC rally. It snowed like mad.
Yeah.
And we were doing very well, and we were tying with Roger Clark for Best British, around about third or fourth place, I think. And on the last night in Northern Wales, in one of the North Wales state forests, we went off the road, and that was out of the event.
Yeah.
That wasn't really due to snow, but we had stages had to be closed up in Scotland because of the snow. Yeah.
I mean, it was a hard rally. I mean, regrettably, okay, they're bringing something vaguely similar back. But the RAC then was a hard rally because, I mean, you also had like the Mintex, which was a Yorkshire rally. And they were held at times of the year when the weather was bad and conditions were bad, and it tested the drivers and the cars and everything else.
The RAC was a very, very hard event because the forests themselves were hard on the cars.
Yeah.
And the sheer distance, I mean, in those days, quite a lot of the events started at London, London Airport, and you went up as far as Scotland, southern Scotland, came back again, and you've been through Yorkshire Forest, you've been through the Northern Kielder.
Yeah.
Scottish Forest and the Welsh Forest and the Lake District. So you've done a big distance. I have an interesting story here. In 1970, I did the RAC rally in a works post with Gerard LaRousse, who later became... Gerard was a Renault driver, or had been a Renault driver, excellent rally driver, but then he turned to a racing driver and eventually ran his own Formula One team.
Yeah.
The Porsche got in touch with me before the RAC rally and asked me if I'd go with Gerard Roos because they wanted to score points for the European Championship. And we started that year in London, and we'd gone all the way up through the Yorkshire Forest and the Northumberland Forest, Kielder. And then we had to go across a bit of Scotland to get over onto the west side, and a lot of moorland driving. And Gerard had driven all the way, and it was a left-hand drive car. It was a proper work sport.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, when it was dark and we were starting to go across this moorland road, and Gerard was going slower and slower and braking and everything. And I said, Gerard, stop. I said, I'll drive. No, I'm all right, he said. No, I said, seriously, you're not. And I said, I've just looked at the map. This is a moorland road which will go on for about 10 or 15 miles, so you'll have about 20 minutes sleep.
Yeah.
I said, you get in the passenger seat and I'll drive.
Yeah.
So he said, are you sure? I said, yes. So that's what we did, and I'd never driven a Porsche in my life before, left-hand drive. And it was dark, and we sat on there. Of course, I was braking a bit at almost everything, every bend. Every bend he shot up, and after about 3 bends, I said, Gerard, this road's like this for about 15 miles. I'm going to do a fair bit of braking and gear changing. It won't alter, but we won't lose time. He put his head on the seat and he fell straight to sleep.
Yeah.
After that, he hardly ever drove. He only drove in the stages. I drove all the way, most of the RAC rally.
Yeah. I mean, that was the thing. Co-drivers, they drove.
Absolutely.
I think it was a case of, like you said, the driver at times drove the stages, especially, but the co-drivers then drove the liaison bits in between.
Yes, it depended on the nature of the event. If you go back to the Alpine Rally, it was almost impossible for a co-driver to drive because of the sheer pressure all the way through it. But Monte Carlo Rally, particularly in those days, when the Monte Carlo Rally used to have various start points.
Yeah. Which they've recreated.
You could
with
start in London, Athens, Lisbon,
Oslo was one, wasn't
all
it?
over.
Yeah.
And that was what they called, I forgot what, but everybody had to do a similar mileage to a converging point. So that was a drag around France. So the co-driver did most of the driving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, they've recreated what you would call the original Monte Carlo with the Monte Carlo Historique, where they start, like you said, Reims, Oslo, Athens, London, all over the place, where they all converge Monte Carlo. But what was the original proper Monte Carlo like? Because, I mean, they made sure you arrived in Monte Carlo, and then you had all the cols to do, didn't you?
Well, let me just quote one of the, I'm trying to think, 63 Monte Carlo Rally.
Yeah.
I did it with a wonderful driver, Jeff Mabbs, who died very young, but he came from Bristol, and Jeff's claim to fame was he'd won the Tulip Rally as a private owner. It was a handicap sort of event, but nevertheless, he won it. He had to drive. And in 1963, I got a phone call from Jeff prior to a couple of months before the event, asking him I'd do the 63 Monte with him in his Mini. And he said, if you do, he said, I've been in touch with Stuart Turner. He said, he'll help you out. It won't cost you anything.
Yeah.
He said, but I'd like you to come with me. So I said, yes, I'll do it, Jeff. He said, just an ordinary Mini Cooper, I think it was.
Yeah.
And this was 63. And then he rang me later. He said, we're going to start from Paris.
Yeah.
He said that was one of the starting control because Stuart somehow has found out that the early numbers will be going, there was no seeding.
Yeah.
We'll be starting from Paris.
Right.
And it was always an advantage to have an early number. So
And I must confess, it's quite a nice place, it's Paris.
Yeah. So then just when they issued the numbers just before early January, he rang me, he said, we're starting from Paris and we draw number 28.
Yeah.
So I jokingly said, I said we could be first going Monte.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now in that year, we had to do the trail around France again and everybody converged on Chambry. We didn't converge on Monte Carlo. The whole event converged. And the event started proper then in the mountains and the Alps.
Yeah.
From Chambry, heading eventually to Monte Carlo, and we had various special stages, and it was a really bad Monte, a lot of snow.
Yeah.
And we battled on. And I remember we came to the town of Gap in the middle of the night, and we had a bit of time there, and we had a bit of service. And we went and had the BMC service, and they looked after the car. And I didn't notice there weren't many cars about. Didn't notice them, but then went to the time control about 5 or 6 minutes before we were due to go out and parked. And I walked down to there was no cars in front of us. And I walked down to the control, Frenchman in bronze, so asked him where the earlier numbers, how many earlier numbers had gone through. He said, no, Premier, you are the first one.
Yeah.
So we were number 28.
Yeah.
And there were no cars in front of it. And we went on, we battled on, it became daylight, we went over the Col de Turini. And then it was a funny thing, because as we were coming near to Monte Carlo Rally, you came up the mountains the other side to a village on the top called La Turbie.
Yeah. Which is actually a famous hill climb.
Yes. And then you drop down, once you've gone through the Turbie, right down below you was the beautiful Mediterranean, Monte Carlo bit. And we shot across the crossroads at the top of the Turby, and at the other side were two police bikes, and they flagged us down. Oh, I said, Jeff, we're going to get penalised here because we haven't stopped at the halt sign. I said, there was nothing like they motioned us to follow them.
Yeah.
And because we were the leading car, they whistled us down to Monte Carlo with the sirens going. Everybody had to stop to let us through. And we were first car into Monte Carlo.
Yeah.
And the old Grand Prix driver, Louis Chiro, he was there, flagged us in at the finish. And I've got a photograph of us crossing the finishing line with Louis with the finishing line. And the Welsh press thought we'd won the event. What I said to Jeff was, I said, what we need now is the biggest avalanche you've ever seen in your life.
Shut it all off.
And we won everything, including the Coupe de Dame.
Yeah.
And, but we eventually finished 15th. Eric Carlson went on to win it.
Because after you got to Monte Carlo, that wasn't it, was it?
It was in those days.
Yeah.
Because all they didn't do anymore then. They all there was then was they used the Grand Prix circuit.
Yeah.
And the drivers had to do about 5 laps without the co-driver, and didn't do a lot toward the result, but they had to do that. That was a sort of a stage, if you will, around the circuit. Later on, what happened was they had the same thing again. Generally, we converged on Monte Carlo.
Yeah.
After the long run round, and then you did what they called the competitive run, which lasted 24 hours.
Yeah.
You had a night's rest in Monte Carlo, and then you started in the morning, and you went out as far as the Ardèche and did special stages and finished, or coming back and back to Monte Carlo. So you a number of specials. And then they had the classification by then, and then the last thing was the mountain circuit, which was 12 hours.
Yeah,
and started at 9 o'clock at night and finished 9 o'clock in the morning. And that was called the mountain circuit. And that was only open to the best 60.
Right.
And so if you're in the top 60, you did that. And that was a wonderful, that was a 12-hour Grand Prix round the Alps. Absolutely wonderful. I can remember in 1968, we got I got my highest finish on the Monte, which was eventually 4th place. Porsche were first and second. Rauner was third in the Mini. We were 4th, Paddy. And Paddy was 5th, and you didn't know her. We did everything, and we did the mountain circuit, and we practiced it quite well. So we knew what we were doing. And I remember coming down to the finish in Monte Carlo, and we went up the ramp at the finish, and Paddy Hopkirk, his co-driver was Ron Crellin, and Paddy was famous because he'd already won the event. And his co-driver was stood on the ramp, and he said, what's your total time? And you've lost it. And I told him, he said, oh my God, he said, you've beaten Paddy. He said, I dare go back and tell him. So that was it. Porsche were first and second because it was very dry. Rauner Alton in the works when he was third. We were 4th and Paddy was 5th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing is that people remember was Paddy was disqualified for I think they tried it with Rosemary Smith, light infringements.
What happened was that Paddy won it in 1964.
Yeah.
In the Mini. Timo Mäkinen and Paul Easter won it in 65 in the Mini.
Yeah.
Then in 66, Mäkinen and Easter were down to win it again.
Yeah.
But by then the French had got a bit fed up at it. They didn't want a Mini winning again.
Yeah.
And I think the whole thing was a fiddle.
Yeah.
And because they reckoned that the BMC had cheated with lights or something with it, it was just a fiddle. And so they were disqualified and probably got more publicity for that than winning it.
Yeah.
And then the year afterwards, in 67, Rauner went on to win it in the Mini. So apart from Tony and myself, the other 3 works drivers had won the Monte.
Yeah.
I always said we didn't win a Monte, but in actual fact we did. Way after when we'd finished rallying, quite a nice event was run every year called the Mini Monte.
Yeah.
It was run by one of our ex-mate, Peter Browning, ex-BMC man. No, it was John Browning. mini Monte, and we were entered in a John Cooper Mini.
Yeah.
Tony and I, we won it, so we did win a Monte.
Now, I mean, you carried on doing a lot of the big European rallies, didn't you? I mean, there was the TAP Portugal Rally.
Yes.
And the interesting thing, before we went to you were saying the Tour de Corse Rally allowed what you might call prototype or experimental cars.
Well, yes, it wasn't the Tour de Corse was a very important event, but it wasn't a world championship event.
Yeah.
Our normal rallies never allowed experimental cars.
Yeah.
They had to be production cars. They could be tuned.
Yeah.
But you had to be a production car.
Well, and don't just put it, that's one of the great things about your era of rallying. The fact that as a spectator, I could see Mike Wood.
You could relate.
I could relate to the car I could see because I could go to the dealership and see more or less the identical car. And if I could afford it, buy it.
That's exactly right. Because if you look at today's rally cars, which cost about £1 million a piece to build,
yeah,
maybe more, they don't relate to everyday cars.
No.
So I'm not against today's rallying, and I'm sure you're going to ask me this question.
Oh, this will come up. Eventually you will get asked this question,
okay,
but don't
well,
answer
that
it
won't
now.
go. Yeah.
I mean, it's like we were saying, the experimental cars.
So, yes,
Tour de
going back
Corse.
to the Tour de Corse, the Tour de Corse was famous because you could enter what they called in those days Group 6 cars.
Yeah.
And Group 6 cars were experimental.
Yeah.
And they had all sorts of fancy cars on there. I'll give you an example. I did, I can't remember what year it was. It must have been 1970, I think. I did the Tour de Corse in a works BMW with Rauno Altonen.
Yeah.
And the cars that BMW used then were BMW 2002,
Yeah.
which were a 2-litre engine. Were a very, very good car because
Yeah.
Tony and I went on to drive on various events with that. He actually won our category in the Tour de France.
Yeah.
In one of those. But on the Tour de Corse, they entered just Rauno and I in a 2002 with a 3-litre engine in.
Yeah.
Now that obviously was going to be a lot quicker, and it was. But we eventually ran out of tyres, and I think that was the reason we eventually had to retire because we didn't have any spare tyres left.
Yeah.
I only ever finished one. I did quite a few Tour de Corse. I only ever finished one, and that was driving with Peugeot and what was their little touring car.
Yeah.
And I think we finished about 10th and 11th. It wasn't a bad result.
I mean, the Tour de Corse, in many ways, is more of a road race than a rally.
Absolutely.
It's all tarmac, it's very narrow, it's very twisty,
Yeah.
very hot.
Well, my first Tour de Corse was, I think, in 1967, and we had at BMC. We had a racing team.
Yeah.
John Rhodes and Clive Baker, a guy called Clive Baker, and Clive was a good racer, and I knew Clive very well. And long story short, we persuaded Healy's. We drove for Healy themselves if they'd let us have a racing Sprite.
Yeah.
And we entered BMC entered a Healy racing Sprite for Clive and I, and we did a full reconnaissance for that event, and did the event. We didn't finish because it was a racing Sprite, and it really wasn't put together well enough to be a rally car.
Now, from there, it's like I said, one of the cars you're famous for, or a lot of people associate you with the Minis, not surprisingly, but I associate you with Tony Fall and the Datsun 240Zs. It was those. I mean, you did the safari rallies with those, didn't you?
Yes, I didn't actually do a safari. I only did 2 safari rallies.
Yeah.
I did 1971 in a privately entered works Lancia.
Yeah.
And we did 230 event, eventually broke down in Uganda. I didn't do 1972, but 1973, Datsun had come along proper, and they entered 240Zs for Shekemeta, Rauno Alton, and perhaps somebody, I think the German driver. And then they had a couple of 180Bs, I think, which was a saloon car for ourselves, and I think Harry Karlstrom got one, and we were entered in the 180B.
Yeah.
And
B standing for Bluebird.
It wasn't a Bluebird.
Oh, right, because they used to call
this
it
was,
Bluebird.
no, that was no, it wasn't a Bluebird. It was just a normal saloon.
Yeah,
With an 1800 engine in.
yeah.
Good car. Long story short again, we finished fourth in it, which was a good result. So
Yeah.
I only did 2 safaris, and I'm quite happy with fourth prize.
I mean, that, from what you see, the photographs in the books and the old footage that appears on YouTube, it looked an incredibly hard rally. I mean, it was another relentless event, wasn't it?
Very much relentless, and of course you've got the heat. And you also, people say this, but it actually happened. You had wild animals.
Yeah.
I
Because the
don't-
roads weren't closed. as
No,
such.
no, the roads weren't closed, but you did have wild animals. Now, I don't think if you did the route now that we did, you wouldn't see that amount of animals.
Yeah.
There were elephants and there were giraffes, and you had to be very careful.
Yeah,
And I remember I think it was probably the first night or something like that, we left the control and all of a sudden, there was this thudding against the windscreen like machine gun fire.
Yeah.
And we hit a blade of locust.
Oh,
And the windscreen wipers couldn't clear them. We
Yeah.
just had to battle through. We couldn't stop and get out.
yeah.
We had to somehow drive through them and then scrape them off the windscreen. Yeah.
I mean, where did it start and finish?
Nairobi.
Right.
Always finished in Nairobi.
Yeah.
Started in Nairobi. Generally started by the president of Kenya.
Yeah.
Kenyatta it was at one time. And then it went from Kenya into Tanzania.
Yeah.
Then back to Nairobi for a halfway halt.
Yeah.
Then you went the other way into Uganda
Yeah.
until Idi Amin took over.
Yeah.
And that,
Stopped it all.
that's fab.
I mean, that's the one thing back there, apart from what you mentioned. I mean, there wouldn't have been the great political problems there are now. Rallying could progress about the place quite
you're
easily.
quite right. I remember the European events, particularly Spa-Sophia, Liège, and other events as well, where you went into Iron Curtain country, like
Yeah.
Romania and Czechoslovakia and stuff like that.
But no problems whatsoever.
Not really, no.
Yeah.
You had to have visas and all the correct paperwork.
Yeah.
Um,
Did you stop at the borders? Did you have to stop at the borders?
oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I remember one of the events we did win was again, I think it was in 1967, and it was a surprise win. It was a one-off event called the Castro Danube Rally.
Yeah.
And it started in Prague and finished on the Black Sea.
Oh, yeah.
And just at one of the coastal resorts, just where the Danube entered the Black Sea.
Yeah.
And we did a full reconnaissance with that in an the BNC entered round Welton and Henry Liddon in a Mini,
Yeah.
and ourselves in an 1800. And that was the first time they'd put an 1800 in the event.
The famous land crabbers.
The famous Land Club. And I knew we got car number 5, which was a good number to have. We did a good recce. We did a full recce
Yeah.
in an 1800 with there was myself and Tony and Henry.
Yeah.
And then we started in Prague. You asked about visas and things. Rauno, for some reason or other, when they came to one of the borders, didn't have the correct visa on
Yeah.
the event himself, not the car, and he couldn't go any further. They wouldn't let the car in, so Rauno was out. We
Yeah.
had everything. Long story short, again, we won it in an 1800, and we
Yeah.
beat Works, Reynolds, and other stuff like that.
Yeah.
That was a surprise win.
I mean, the great thing about the Land Crab was it probably wasn't the prettiest of cars, but it was well built.
Well built, and the other thing was, I said to Tony, I said, running at Garden, it was predominantly dirt road,
Yeah.
on the surface road, and dry weather, where you're going to leave a big cloud of dust behind. And I said,
Yeah.
with a big 1800, we'll leave this cloud of dust and be around for about a week.
I mean, you read about some of the big rallies like those, and that was one of the major problems.
Yeah.
It was the dust.
Yeah.
It caused quite a lot of accidents in many ways. A driver, a crew would get behind a car generating dust, and at times it could be stuck behind that car for mile after mile or hours, and the faster car couldn't get past.
Well, the Safari Rally used to try and eliminate that by starting cars from control at 2-minute intervals.
Yeah.
So that did eliminate it a bit, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, how did you like that type of rally?
Loved it.
Did you have a preference for chilly in Europe and nice and hot in Africa, or?
I love that. You get asked which was your favourite event, and I can't remember. I'd have to say the Spa-Sauvier because that was probably the hardest. But every event was unique. The Monte Carlo was a very technical event. It was on snow and ice and dry, and certainly surface road. Safari, almost totally on surface road. The Alpine surface road. RAC Rally in the forest.
Yeah.
Everything was a bit different. I had no particular preference, really. Yeah.
So, I mean, as time goes by, I mean, we're looking at the list, Tour de France Auto, and that event is, shall we say, close to my heart, because not the same event that you did, but I've actually taken part in that event. But for the moment, we're coming to the end of part 2 of the Mike Wood story and his rallying exploits. So once again, Mike, thank you very much, and we look forward to coming back for part 3.
Rarely beaten on price, never beaten on service. Whether it's cars, bikes or commercials, Hodder Tyres are the best in the business. And when it comes to tyre expertise and advice to supplying the correct tyres for your vehicle's specific requirements, nobody comes close to David Lakin and the Hodder Tyres team. So give them a call on 01200 613 192 or visit the website at hoddertyres.co.uk.